This story is divided into 4 chapters. In the first chapter, Revelation, we are introduced to a woman named Elizabeth, who lives in the Midwest with her husband, Illy, and their 2 children. The first one is Matthew, who is Illy's son from a previous marriage. And then there is Sam, their recently born daughter. Elizabeth is a mute woman who communicates through sign language. She works as a midwife and is regarded to be excellent at delivering babies. One day at the local church, a new preacher by the name of Reverend shows up. He talks about false prophets and how they are cancerous to society. When Elizabeth hears his voice, she becomes scared. It is evident that she has a history with this man. Later, as the family is about to leave, a woman named Abigail suddenly goes into labor. Elizabeth takes her inside the church and helps with the delivery process. Unfortunately, she realizes that the baby is abnormal, so it is impossible to take it out without harming the mother. This means that one of them will have to go. After a lot of consideration, Elizabeth secretly euthanizes the baby, hence saving Abigail's life. When they reach home, Illy consoles his wife, saying what happened earlier was not her fault. In response, she says it was the Reverend's fault. However, Illy dismisses her claims, as he believes the Reverend is a man of God. Later, Elizabeth heads to Abigail's house to check on her. However, the woman's husband, Nathan, stops her, saying the Reverend has already arranged a doctor for them. That night, he gets excessively drunk and arrives outside Elizabeth's house with a gun. He shoots aimlessly, while shouting that she killed his son. Illy tries his best to calm him down, but to no avail. After a while, the Reverend shows up and sends Nathan away. When Elizabeth notices him, she desperately tells her husband to not let him in, but Illy does anyway. The 2 men then have a weird conversation while Elizabeth listens in from the other room. Judging by her expression, she appears to be terrified of the man. Meanwhile, the Reverend tells Illy that his wife has committed a sin as she decided who was to live and who was to pass. He says that she will be punished for this. He then asks Elizabeth to come out, but she is too scared for that. Thus, the Reverend leaves, but not before promising to come back again. As soon as he departs, Elizabeth pleads with her husband that they have to leave town. This time, Illy understands that the man is dangerous, so he agrees. He promises that they will go to his father's house in a few days. By that time, he will try to sell his sheep. Unfortunately, the next morning, when Matthew goes inside the barn, he is met with a gruesome sight. All the sheep have been slaughtered mercilessly. Illy assumes that this is Nathan's doing, so he and Matthew immediately grab his guns and set off to confront him. Meanwhile, Elizabeth blindfolds her daughter as she doesn't want the little girl to witness the bloody situation. She then goes inside the barn to clean up the mess, but just then, someone locks the door from outside. When Elizabeth peeks through a hole, she is terrified to see the Reverend taking her daughter away. She desperately calls for help, but no one is around to listen to her. When she tries to climb up the door, she slips and falls, resulting in her passing out. When Elizabeth wakes up, the door is open and Illy has returned. He reveals that he went to Nathan's residence, but learned that the couple had already moved to another city the previous night. This makes it impossible for Nathan to be the culprit. As the 2 are talking, Sam suddenly shows up, bringing relief to the parents. That night, while Elizabeth is tucking her daughter to bed, the latter asks her a very weird question. She inquires if her mom is a bad person. Hearing this, Elizabeth realizes that the Reverend brainwashed her daughter. So, in a fit of rage, she decides to murder him at his house. She grabs a knife, gets on her house, and travels across the lonely town in the middle of the night. However, when she reaches the house, she only finds her daughter's doll on his bed. On the other hand, we learn the Reverend has infiltrated her house. He is currently lurking above a sleeping Sam. At the same time, Illy jolts awake from his sleep and realizes that his wife is missing. When he looks around, he notices something amiss in the barn, so he decides to check it out. Illy grabs his shotgun and heads there, but as soon as he opens the door, the Reverend stabs him multiple times. When Elizabeth returns, she finds her husband still alive, but his guts are protruding out of his stomach. With his final breaths, he asks his son, Matthew, to take the family to his grandfather's farm. The boy then grabs a gun and mercy kills his father. At the same time, Elizabeth realizes that the Reverend has set fire to their house. So, without wasting any time, she takes her kids and flees the scene in their carriage. The second chapter of the movie, Exodus, begins as we see a 13-year-old girl named Joanna wandering through the deserts. Soon, she passes out due to severe dehydration. A traveling Chinese family finds her later and takes her to the nearby town of Bisma. After Joanna is nursed back to health, she is sold to the owner of a brothel named Frank. He appears to be a greedy and dangerous individual who can go to any lengths to please his customers. As the days pass, Joanna befriends one of the escorts named Sally, who takes good care of her. She explains the do's and don'ts of the place and always protects her from evil eyes. One day, a drunk customer takes interest in Joanna, but Sally quickly persuades him to spend the night with her. The man accepts, but only on the condition that Joanna will watch them. Later, during the romantic session, the man gets increasingly aggressive and starts beating up Sally. He then turns to Joanna, and this is when Sally makes the difficult decision to shoot him dead. As a result of her actions, she is publicly hanged the next day. The scene then cuts to several years later, and we see that Joanna has turned into an adult. She is now one of the popular escorts of the brothel. Joanna spends most of her time with her best friend, Elizabeth. They dream of escaping this wretched city. One day, a man tries to harass Elizabeth and she responds by biting his tongue. Unfortunately, this is a huge offense for Frank, and he punishes the poor woman by cutting off her tongue. This makes her mute, and she is now forced to communicate in sign language. Regardless, this doesn't deter Elizabeth from her dream of escaping the city and living a peaceful life. One day, the two friends go to a matchmaker, who mentions that a man named Ali is willing to marry Elizabeth. He already has a son with his previous wife. Elizabeth promptly accepts the offer and she asks Joanna to join her. The two friends then return to their room and start packing, but just as they are about to leave, a wealthy customer buys all the escorts for the night. He is none other than the evil Reverend. That night, despite having all the escorts to himself, he only calls Joanna to his room. He claims that he is beyond salvation, but he is here to save her. As Joanna stands there, shivering, he asks her to own him. He says that she has been running away from him for too long, and now it's time she makes amends. When Joanna resists, he starts assaulting her mercilessly. Elizabeth hears the commotion from the other room, so she quickly arrives to help her friend. Unfortunately, the Reverend stabs her to death. He then proceeds to do the same with Joanna, but she manages to slash his throat with the same knife. After this, she dresses up Elizabeth as herself and sets her body on fire. Later, Joanna goes to a doctor to get her tongue cut off. When he hesitates, she does it herself. She then gets on a carriage and sets off for Ellie's home, disguising herself as Elizabeth. The third chapter of the movie is Genesis, and it takes us to a few years earlier. In a surprising turn of events, the Reverend is revealed to be none other than Joanna's father. He is a dishonorable and wicked man who regularly beats his wife, Anna. One day, Joanna spots blood on her clothes and thinks that she is sick. However, her mom makes her understand that this is very normal for girls her age. As the two are chatting, the Reverend spots them from a distance and learns what's going on. He seems to have developed a weird attraction towards his own daughter. He regularly stares at her and even makes her clean him up. When Anna notices this, she tells him that it is unethical. However, he only responds by punishing her even more. One day, Joanna finds two injured men, John and Wolf, outside her barn. They appear to be the remaining survivors of a conflict. Seeing them so desperate for help, Joanna secretly hides them inside her barn. She also feeds them and gives them medicine to heal. As the days pass, she develops a good relationship with John. However, Wolf only tries to flirt with her. John then reveals to her that he and Wolf are not friends. In fact, the latter will not hesitate to kill him when he gets fully well. So, John hatches a plan and kills the man first while he is taking a dump. In the meantime, the Reverend takes his wife to a blacksmith and designs a special instrument to cover her mouth. He says that this is a punishment for her actions. This leaves poor Anna feeling humiliated, as she isn't even allowed to speak from now on. The following day at the church, while the Reverend is giving one of his BS speeches, she suddenly commits the unthinkable. Despite this, the Reverend doesn't feel bad for her and instead says that she deserved it. Now that Anna is out of the way, he tries to force his own daughter to marry her. He even puts the same metal instrument around her face. When she resists and screams for help, John arrives and confronts the Reverend. He tries to shoot him, but the latter easily counters and shoots him dead. After this, the Reverend drags his daughter and whips her for befriending a stranger. He even forces himself onto her. When he gets tired and falls asleep, Joanna runs away from the house. The final chapter of the movie is Retribution, and it begins after the first one ended. Joanna and her two children are riding through the snowy terrains, desperate to reach Ellie's father's house. But unfortunately, along the way, the Reverend catches up to them and kills Matthew. Joanna is shattered, but she doesn't have the time to mourn, so she continues on her way. After a while, she finally reaches her father-in-law's house and explains the entire scenario to him. The old man breaks down in tears after learning that his son and grandson are dead. Nonetheless, he promises to keep little Sam safe. After a while, Joanna grabs her gun and decides to keep guard outside. She soon spots the Reverend in the dark and shoots at him, but he appears to be elusive. He tries to intimidate her by saying that he is going to turn Sam into a woman. He also says that she made a mistake by leaving her daughter alone. Hearing this, Joanna rushes inside the house, only to find her father-in-law dead. Terrified, she tries to escape with her daughter, but the evil Reverend captures them. In the next scene, we see that the two have been tied to separate poles. The Reverend approaches Sam and whips her numerous times as Joanna watches in horror. He claims that he is a man beyond salvation, so he can do anything that he wants. But just as he is about to do something horrible to the little girl, Joanna breaks her arms and sets herself free. She then grabs a lantern and throws it towards her father, setting him on fire. Now that he is incapacitated, Joanna shots him at point-blank range, finally killing him. The scene then cuts to several months later, and we see that the mother and daughter are living a peaceful life. Joanna has started a sawmill at her late father-in-law's house. Some of her relatives are helping her out in her business. Unfortunately, trouble once again manages to find Joanna, this time in the form of Nathan. One day, he arrives with his men, revealing himself to be the new sheriff. He then displays a poster of Elizabeth, who is apparently wanted for killing the brother owner, Frank. Hearing this, Joanna realizes that during that fateful night, Elizabeth had actually killed Frank before coming to her aid. But since she has already taken the identity of that woman, she is unable to defend herself. Poor Joanna is then arrested and taken away in a ship. As she sails away, she notices Sam happily playing with one of her relatives. This provides her with some relief, as the Reverend is no longer around to torment her daughter. Joanna then takes one final look at Sam before committing the unthinkable. Several years later, we see that Sam has grown into a woman. She has a daughter of her own and runs the sawmill. Despite losing her mother at an early age, she says that she can still feel her around.